Hi there. Thank you for joining this reporting interview. Hi, Ronie. Thank you for joining us. Would you like to introduce yourself and your organization to our listener and viewer, please?
Sure. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Ronie, and I'm from an organization called the Intersex Community of Zimbabwe, ICOZ in short. Where I am the founding executive director, which is an intersex-led organization.
And when did you start your organization?
We started in 2018 in October. That's when we founded the organization, and we formally registered the organization in 2021 in May.
And what is the current legal situation for sexual and gender minorities in your nation state?
Well, in Zimbabwe, there is no legal recognition of gender and sex minority groups or maybe persons, which means that most sex and gender minorities are actually criminalized by the law, even though the law itself criminalizes the act itself, but then we find ourselves also maybe getting affected by the very same law in terms of, like, sometimes you would get into trouble with the law even without you being found being in the act, so to say.
Could you explain what do you mean by you can be had some trouble with the law? In which form? What happened?
Like in the past year, we've actually seen that in Zimbabwe, some organizations, when they are holding their activities, they were raided by the law enforcement.
Wow.
Yeah, people, sometimes they've been arrested, tortured, abused, you name it, just having their violation, their rights being violated. And there is no law that protects sex and gender minority people. So yeah, even though there's no case that is actually gone to court and someone getting convicted by the very same law, but still, these are some of the incidents that we find ourselves maybe getting affected by the very same law, under that same law that then criminalizes same-sex conduct.
And do you mean even the police, like, is acting like? I mean, do you face like violence from the police as well, or arrests from the police as well?
Yes, by saying that law enforcement agencies, that includes the police, or be it security officer, those maybe ununiformed security forces. Yeah, so basically, yes.
And what is your organization doing? Can you explain to us how you are helping people?
Well, our organization, the Intersex Community of Zimbabwe, like I said earlier on, we are an intersex-led organization. We are basically standing for the rights, fighting for the rights of intersex people, which includes fighting for the legal recognition of intersex people in Zimbabwe, and also all the protections according to the international human rights standards. So this is the greater part of our work. And we are also there to offer support to intersex persons. That's various forms of support, be it physical, mental, psychosocial, economic support. So that's what we basically stand for. And we are also acting as a hub of information, whereby we disseminate information about intersex to help our community members to be able to self-accept themselves and also be empowered in terms of information about themselves, because I think there is a very big gap when it comes to the availability of information, especially when it comes to intersex persons. Intersex persons themselves, they even struggle to understand themselves. So yes, we are an organization that is a hub that also provides all this information. We also support parents of intersex children, because in most cases you'd find that they are found in a position whereby they do not have adequate information to make informed decisions, especially when it comes to intersex surgeries. In most cases where we find that these surgeries, they are just sort of like forced on them simply because they are just made to believe that being intersex is an abnormality that needs to be corrected. And they also lack information, adequate information, for them to be able to accept their own babies or children. And since when they're interacting with doctors, the language of the doctors, it brings an idea, or maybe it implies to the fact that it's a medical emergency that then needs to be fixed as soon as possible, whereby the intersex person in question has got no say. According to the law, a parent can make a decision to alter a child's body without the consent of the child, which is something that we have been witnessing, that it also comes with negative consequences when the child is growing up. So basically, it's just that general information that we support parents of intersex children, and we also linking that to the international human rights standard, so that we help our members to understand what the international guidelines and recommendations when it comes to dealing with intersex people.
Wow, that's an amazing job. It's a great job that you're doing. Congratulations. I mean, it's amazing to see. It's always amazing to see people like you, having a great impact on our community. What is the religious leader stance regarding gender minorities in your nation?
Well, the way sex and gender minorities or minority persons are looked at in the religious spectrum, it's quite it's quite disappointing, and it's of a great concern to us, because most of the discrimination is we actually face it there in spaces that we usually feel that we should be receiving love, understanding, acceptance, but you would find that is where most cases or issues of stigmatizing and discrimination is coming from, because of this lack of understanding of persons of sex and gender minority groups. So yeah, you would find that unfortunately in Zimbabwe, we cannot openly speak about these issues. And once they interpret, be it their scriptures in the way that suits maybe the majority of them, then they will end up sort of like demonizing being different in this way in the aspect of gender and sex minority. So yeah, it is a challenge that we are facing, even though there is work that is being done, but it's very difficult and it takes time to change people's perspectives when it comes to looking at sex and gender minorities.
And what are the social and cultural attitudes toward gender minorities in your nation? How do people, like the general public, react? So,
well, Zimbabwe is made up of, we can actually say that Zimbabwe is a Christian country because it's made up of maybe sort of like 90% of Zimbabweans are actually Christian. So religion in terms of Christianity has got a big influence on the social aspect or on society, whereby when people are looking at sex and gender minority people, they're actually looking at them with that lens, that religious lens, to say that, oh, this is unreligious or unchristian, or yeah, it's demonic. Yeah, it's like we are outcasts. We're not supposed to be tolerated or even to be accepted. So yeah, like I said, the society itself, even though there is a slight shift, because I think if you've been following, our former president R.G. Mugabe has been very vocal when talking against sex and gender minorities in a way that it has actually also had that very big influence on how people perceive being sex and gender minorities. But right now, we can actually see that after the change of power, the shift in power, yes, there is this aspect whereby sex and gender minorities are being tolerated, especially when it comes to the health sector in fighting against HIV and AIDS. So yeah, yes, it's not where we would want to see ourselves, but yes, there is a bit of shift than what it used to be before.
that's a good thing. Do you know if it's always been this way for sexual and gender minorities? Do you think it happens? You said because of Christianity. Do you know if it was different before? Is it something we came with colonialism, which we saw in a lot of countries? Do you know?
I strongly believe that sex and gender minorities, minority persons have always existed. Yeah, yeah. But I think with colonialism, because remember that colonialism, it came with its own set of rules and laws as to how it also brought Christianity, of course.
Yeah, that's why I was asking you, because we saw it in a lot of different countries, especially in the African continent. So I wanted to know if it was the same as well.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so from my research, I've also been doing some minor researches whereby I try to track down and maybe whereby I've seen that I've discovered that it never used to. Yes, there were people who were tolerated for being different. So I think colonialism also played a big part in the stigmatization and discrimination of sex and gender minority persons.
And what is life specifically for intersex people in Zimbabwe? How do you could you tell us? I mean, because of course it's always better to hear it from someone who's part of the community.
Yeah, it's not easy being an intersex, like living as an intersex in Zimbabwe, because first of all, I think these issues, like issues of this big secret, like it's a big secret of when an intersex child is born, no one is supposed to know except a few close relatives. But information has got its own way of leaking, and once information leaks, you cannot control whatever people put out there in terms of like wrong information. So you would find that the way society looks at you, knowing that maybe you are intersex, maybe you've grown up being intersex. Like, for example, for instance, myself, I was assigned male after being born, and I grew up, everyone knew that Ronie is male. And at puberty, obviously I went through a set of corrective surgeries, intersex corrective surgeries, whereby they were trying to normalize my body and so on. And at some point, maybe around about puberty, 16, 17 years or somewhere there, simply because my body then started changing. My parents were now advised by doctors to say that, I think that it would be best if you then start raising the child as female now. So you see, it's not easy that at one point someone knows you as this, and then on the other. So always, if in most cases, not only in my case, but in most intersex people's, when we share because that's what we do, we share experiences, you would find that there's a lot of like issues of isolation. There's also issues of the lack of stability. You do not get to grow up in one place, flourish, and just be accepted just like that. So every time it's a case of you trying to run away from your past, or from people who might discover who you are, or maybe the changes that are actually going on into your life, and self-denial, because you have to totally disengage yourself and start living as something that you've never known yourself to be. So in most cases, these are some such issues. You have to constantly, even if you meet somebody who knows you, you just have to deny, to say, oh no, it's not me, maybe it's my twin or something. So these are issues like whereby you would find that most intersex people, they are growing up under very difficult conditions, and you would find that most intersex people have not had a chance just to start off with, of acquiring even legal documentation in terms of birth certificates and IDs. And meaning that once you do not have those documents, you cannot attain an education. Or sometimes if you're lucky, you attain an education up to maybe primary level, you finish your primary level, but as you then start secondary level, a lot of things have changed. you have to start living as something else. And you'd find that most intersex people, they drop off school there. You'd find that there are also issues of intersex babies being abandoned by their parents in hospitals.
Wow.
So yeah. We've got many cases of intersex persons being abandoned as children, and also being disowned, because sometimes the moment that you want to start living your truth, to say, okay, look, I understand, and I've accepted who I am. I have to live my truth. I have to stop hiding and running away. I'm just coming out. This is who I am. You'd find that most families do not want to associate themselves with your truth. So they are kind of, I think there is this issue of being shameful about that. And we've also seen issues of intersex children, because this is a practice that used to be, that used to happen, from a long time ago, whereby giving birth to an intersex child was associated maybe with witchcraft, bed, or bed omen, and all sort of things, or an abomination. You'd find that parents would be forced to probably let the child be killed in some way that they would justify, or sometimes just to be told that the baby did not make it. And also in cultural settings, you'd find that because I've learned of another history whereby they used to put intersex children in a big pot, and they would put it on fire, and
Really?
and boil the infant and go and throw it over into the flowing river, and that would be it. So a lot of intersex people are very much challenged in terms of even trying to socially integrate after having lived the rest of their lives in isolation. So now that the people who were trying to protect them, or maybe to act as if they're protecting them, maybe they are no longer there. Now you have to face life alone. For them to be able to socially integrate, it's also a very big challenge. And as much as you know that even if you do not have an education in this day and age, it's very challenging as well for you to be able to find a job, or to be able to do to have a meaningful and fulfilling life. So and you'd find that a lot of your rights are also infringed upon because you do not have an identity, and the law itself of the country does not legally recognize you, which means that you cannot really identify. You are just as good as someone who doesn't exist. So these are some of the issues that I can just mention at the meantime.
You said a lot of people are leaving school. Is it because there's some discrimination at school? Is it?
Yes, that's correct. If you're an intersex person, or maybe you're an intersex child going to school, obviously, like I said earlier on, even if as much as they try to hide information, but sometimes information has got its own way of leaking, and you'd find that there is a lot of stigma at school because, school children, they start bullying and discriminating and stigmatizing against those children. That then forces even these most intersex people to end up not wanting to go to school, because even in those cases, there is no protection. There's no protection at school. There's no legal protection as well. So yeah, most intersex people end up just dropping out of school.
And the discrimination is it coming only from children or also from teachers? Do you know?
Yes, and in some cases, you'd find that even teachers, they do discriminate against, even though sometimes it's very difficult to prove, because they try to cover it up, but you'd find that discrimination, even from the school personnel itself, it is very, very common.
Is there other human rights issues like faced by sexual and gender minorities, such as housing or employment discrimination?
Sure. That's a very big challenge, especially within the sex and gender minority groups. There's a lot of discrimination within workspaces, access to services, be it healthcare, access to housing, especially when we're talking about same-sex people, those who are practicing same-sex relationships, simply because the law itself does not recognize whether it's your union or whatever that you call it. You cannot access housing, and there are no provisions at all for you to be able to access all these basic services.
So if you're looking for a place and you are a couple, a same-sex couple, the landlord could or the landlady could refuse to give you a place, to rent you a place because of that, yeah?
Yes, yeah, because obviously, in most cases, you'd find that same-sex couples, they are forced to lie. Sometimes they would get a place and then they would lie to say that we are sisters or we are brothers. But obviously, for some reason, people get to find out. You'd find that sometimes they get kicked out, or maybe if they know even before, you're not given a place. I know of one other case that our organization has had to intervene and try to assist another same-sex couple. The landlord had to break into the house and call the police on them. Yeah, so they were arrested. So we intervened. We tried to get this couple to be out of trouble, and we had to engage an LGBT organization and human rights lawyers. So yeah, they had to take over from where we had left off.
And well, that's, I mean, once again, that's amazing that there are people like you there to help people. I mean, once again, congratulations, because what you're doing is amazing. And talking about your organization, is there like some type of resistance from sexual and gender minorities, like organization like you? Maybe, I don't know, like social and legal changes, or secret group community centers. Where do you, I mean, have you got like, how can I say, LGBTQIA plus friendly places where you can meet, or do you have to hide, or how does it work?
There are other older organizations. Obviously, they started way back before ours. But those are organizations that deal with like LGBTI, the broader LGBTI issues. And yeah, they do serve sex and gender minority populations. They do have spaces, but I think one challenge that we have as a community of intersex persons, I think we are still standing at a point whereby the issue of social integration, it's still a bit of a challenge, because it seems like most intersex people, they do not trust easily, and they are not comfortable to be socially integrating as much as they should be doing, even within the broader LGBTI spaces themselves. So you'd find that our community is very hidden. The only spaces that we find ourselves being in, it's those spaces that we do create as an organization, and probably invite them and make sure that we ensure them of their safety, privacy, and their security. Yes, we've seen them coming out, but not in the numbers that we would want them to. So yeah, people are still warming up to the idea and getting used and starting to build a little bit of trust. But yeah, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. But as much as you know that it all boils down to issues of resources, because if you do not have enough resources, you wouldn't be like offering these spaces as much as you would want to, because I think if you do it frequently, people gets used to being in the spaces and making sure that maybe they come up, they come out in their numbers, and and experience these safe spaces that we would have created.
Is it like a place where people can come and talk, or is it like a bar, or is it like a place where they can have music as well, or is it a bit of both, or everything?
Yeah, it's a bit of both, because we cannot only concentrate on like the serious side of life and offering, spaces whereby we can just talk and share experiences. Yeah. Yes, we do. We do have that that platform and those spaces. And what we usually do is that we also, for example, we hold such an event like party, just to maybe people can. Hello.
Sorry. So if you can just repeat what you were saying, Ronie, please. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm just trying to fix my gadget here. Right. So as I was saying earlier on, we do have spaces, but the spaces that we have created in the past, we would create a space whereby you would find that we hold maybe certain events whereby we come together, we share experiences, we probably just support each other, sometimes with psychosocial support and etc. But after that event, you would find that maybe we would throw in sort of like a party, a socialization party whereby there are drinks, there's food, and people get to loosen up and enjoy and socialize.
It's part of life. It's great. It's great to have this.
But then when it comes to LGBTI, exclusive LGBTI spaces, I've seen that intersex persons are a bit skeptical to be in those spaces because from my experience, from speaking to them as to why they are not keen to join such spaces, you'd find that some would express different sentiments to say, maybe some do not feel that they do belong to that community, because not every intersex person also identifies with the other sex and gender minority groups. And you would find that some they've experienced probably stigma and discrimination even within spaces. Like I can relate to one issue that happened during COVID, whereby I encouraged the members to join some online groups so that they can actually interact with other sex and gender minorities, but they ended up being bullied in those spaces.
Really?
Yes, it has happened. So they do not feel comfortable being in those spaces. So it's not our duty to force people to be in spaces that they don't feel comfortable. And some still have their own issues of just being in spaces because remember the culture of isolation, and they're slowly trying to break away, but it's still there, because even as we hold our own events, not everyone is comfortable to be in those spaces. So we would find that as much as our membership is up to maybe 40 something members, but you would find that maybe only less than half of the number maybe comes and participate in those events. So it's work in progress. People need to. We are still working on boosting their confidence and just encouraging them.
Yeah, that is why I once again I'm grateful for you to be here and to share your life experience, because for me I think that sometimes we forget the other layers of our communities, and for me it's really important in the interview that we're making to have the full spectrum and the full representation, because we are community, and it's not only. Sometimes I feel even myself as a gay man, I feel like it's sometimes focusing too much on gay people, and we forget a bit the rest of the letter. So I try to have a better representation, because we all part of the same community, and it's really sad to have people bullying from our own community to other people from our own communities, because all of us get bullied all the time, and we should know better than that. And it's a shame that we can't accept all of us, because we should know better, and we are the one who gets discriminated all the time. And if there's discrimination in our own community, that's a really bad start. So I think and I hope that having people like you sharing your life experience will also make people realize and understand that we all facing. Of course, we have different issues, but we all from the same community. We should all listen and accept each other, because if we don't do that, we can't expect people who are not part of the community to do it. It's not from us. So yeah, once again, thank you for sharing your life experience. Is there any?
Yeah.
There's no pride in Zimbabwe, is there? There's no pride events in Zimbabwe officially.
You mean pride events?
Yeah.
Oh, unfortunately, I haven't come across one. Yeah, I have not come across one.
Do you follow any?
Because
any of them? Sorry, do you follow any of them online?
Yeah. I've been to 2 pride events. That is in South Africa, of course, and I do follow online pride events. Yeah, I think they're beautiful, and I think they're very interesting events. And yeah, but unfortunately here in Zimbabwe, we haven't had any pride events, that not to my knowledge, at least. We haven't had.
Not yet. We'll have hopefully my dream is to have pride everywhere and stop all this stupid discrimination. I mean, we all last week I was interviewing an activist from Haiti, and they say something beautiful. They were like, we all have the same name, and so we should all be treated the same, the same. If you're from a country, you all have the same name. So why some of us are treated differently, and we all the same, and hopefully one day it will change, and we can all live our truth freely and without any fear. But once again, I have to commend you for what you're doing, because people like you are just so I'm always amazed with people like you, meeting people like you, because what you're doing. I think me living in Europe, I was born in France, and now I live in England. I realize how lucky I am, because it's okay. Of course, there's discrimination, something like that, but at least I think it's more commendable to have people like you doing a great work in places who are difficult. I think me being an activist in England is like, yeah, it's easier. But you are really you're a great person. You should get commended.
Thank you so much.
No, that's really amazing. Talking about that, is there any key figures or any famous people who are part of our community, who are openly part of our community in Zimbabwe, or nobody in like I would say maybe kind of famous in Zimbabwe?
You mean those who are intersex?
Yes.
Well, I'm not sure about the word famous. Yeah, but yeah, we do have intersex activists, because it's very difficult for one person to, especially if you are intersex, to actually get the attention of many people. Even if maybe you you're famous in your own way, and probably if you're talented or you've got a skill or things like that, because there are many intersex people who are artists, like myself, but for you to get the attention, because remember, for you to gain that attention, you need somebody to focus on you, on your work, on your art, on what you do best. Probably we are not given enough coverage for us to showcase what we can do. And if you cannot get that attention, be it media attention, unfortunately, you can't be famous. But yes, in terms of intersex activists, we do have a couple of them that I know that we do work hand in hand. I'm based in another place that is called Chitungiza, which is about 30 something kilometers away from the main capital city of Zimbabwe, which is Harare. I can say that where I am, where I do my work, where I'm best, I'm not sure if I'm famous, but I think I have actually made a mark in terms of like coming out and speaking openly about being intersex and showcasing, the skill that I have, especially when it comes to what I do best. Not being sure if I am famous though. We do have other activists. I think.
Sorry, Ronie, I think the connection is a bit.
Also have another activist in Harare. I don't know if they're famous, but I don't think so. We also have another. I beg your pardon.
Sorry, can you repeat the communication was cutting off? Can you repeat what you just said? Sorry about that.
Okay, no. We do have another intersex activist who is based in Harare, and she focuses more on serving children, young children and babies, intersex, from the intersex community. So I'm not sure whether she's famous or not, but I'm aware that she is actually very passionate about that, and she's also a journalist at the same time. And we also have another, and we also have another intersex activist in Bulawayo, which is the second largest, is it second or third largest town in Zimbabwe? I think that is the second capital city for Zimbabwe. He's called Malume, or they call him Malume, that is called Chandiwe Ngwenya. One person that I look up to, and very passionate about serving the intersex community, especially from the rural backgrounds, in the rural areas, doing a lot of work for the rural community. One thing that
amazing.
Yes. One thing that is said though is that for all this very much important work, you'd find that sometimes people do not find focusing on the work that they are doing as maybe important, but they, especially when it comes to media, they focus on stories, and these are stories that they use especially to build their profiles and sell papers, make a profile for themselves. So it's just unfortunate that despite all the important work that is being done, it gets overshadowed by maybe journalists just trying to build their profile, or maybe making headlines that sell, but ignoring the important work that is being done by certain individuals. So it's said in that way, because when it comes to sex and gender minority persons, no matter how good they are, especially here in Zimbabwe, I am yet to come across a very popular, a famous sex and gender minority person or activist or artist, because I don't know, maybe there is a reason behind that. I'm not sure, but in my own community.
You think it's because of the way that the media showing us? Is it that's why it's not maybe maybe they don't show us in a good way or in a positive way? Do you think that's why there's no one famous or?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I think this is a social problem whereby society itself does not fully understand sex and gender minorities. They do not understand, because I remember at some point I got someone accusing us of recruiting people or recruiting other, like children to be in our circles or our groups and doing all that. It is because of that lack of information, because they do not understand. They do not know what we stand for. They, I think from the way this message of being sex and gender minorities has been preached over the years, it has actually made people, build that that brick wall whereby they are not even willing to learn or to gain an understanding, or even to try and focus on other aspects of that particular individual, because they feel that and they fear that they might end up getting recruited into being part of whatever sexual practices and whatever.
Like it's a choice. Like it's a choice. So yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So that's my own perspective, because I've tried looking at it from many ways, and that's the only thing that actually makes sense at the moment.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that will be also the role of the media to inform people of our community, of the difference between our community as well, and I think I've seen I spoke with a lot of activists, and I've met some activists who are going to people jobs or school, and when people explained, a lot of people were like, oh, I didn't know that, or and I've never been told that, or so I think unfortunately it's a lot of education that needs to be done, just to I think it's okay to ask question, and as long as you are respectful, and because if people don't know, and they need to be explained, and a lot of time I think it's because people don't know, and unfortunately they haven't been told or explained what is the difference, or who we are, and a lot of people I've seen, when once they got explained that, they're like, oh, I didn't know.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I think it's a political and educational thing that needs to be done, and of course from activists like you or us as well, but also I think the media as well is responsible for that, and they should instead of looking for, like you said, big stories, or they should try to also explain and educate people. I think that's because I mean, if you never heard about um, someone or any, because I remember with all the interviews that I did, a lot of people told me that even when they were young, they didn't have anyone like them, so they didn't know, they didn't even understand who they were, and then they met, activists like you, and they were like, oh, actually, I'm normal, there's nothing wrong with me, because you meet other people, and then you realize, well, actually, I'm not the only one, and yeah, education, it's, I think to start the conversation and to educate people will help a lot.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's very much unfortunate because I've always made my sentiments in regards to issues of like educating and informing. I think we are very few activists. We are very few. We cannot do everything by ourselves. So I think we also need platforms created, and we also need the government to play its role as well, because if we do not have platforms whereby we can actually sit down with our laws and with our law and policymakers, it's very unfortunate. At times, some of these issues, they're very complex, especially when it comes to the issue of intersex. Many people, they know that they are intersex people and they do exist, but they do not really have the proper understanding of intersex. The only understanding that they have, it can be distorted, and they do not even know the difference between gay, lesbian, transgender, intersex, non-binary people, queer, they do not even know. So I think the government itself has not made it, or maybe they did not commit to understand people who are part of the society in their diversity. I think if it starts there, it really needs to be a very big program, and I think we also need to have an entry point to say that in order for the rest of the others to be understood easily, we need to have an entry point to start somewhere where it really makes sense to say, okay, we understand this, and everything else will make sense after that. So I've always said that I strongly believe that the government should make it a policy to have maybe intersex education as part of the curriculum, because these are diverse bodies that are actually natural bodies. And once you understand this subject as part of biology, a biology subject, it then makes sense, because remember, intersex is actually an umbrella term with so many variations. So which means that it actually intersects with the other identities at some point. So I think it's easier that way. I've always made that that sentiment of mine known, and saying that as much as we are the LGBTI community, we need to be a collective of people who intersect somewhere, and we need to be understood, but we need to have an entry point. So I think that it is the role of the government to try and do its part in terms of like understanding people who are part of, people who have voted them into power.
Yeah, and hopefully we should also put, people from our community in power as well, because sometimes you can't only rely on the ally you know, but also, as we said, you know, all of us have different as well issues, even if we're part of the same community, and sometimes you just don't know if you're not part of the community or so yeah. We should have a better presentation, definitely. Um, so, Ronie, is there anything else you would like to say about gender, minorities, or intersex people in your nation? Just to finish this interview.
Well, I think for me, I think there is need. I've always said this. I think there is need to for sex and gender minorities to also have a proper understanding of one another, because I think this is one other challenge that I've actually come across, to see that hence there is stigmatization of the other and probably discrimination and etc. There is need for our different groups to understand that, yes, as much as we might have our different issues, different needs, and maybe different ways of addressing our problems, but there is this need for us to stand as one and be supportive of one another and stop competing, because I think there is this element of competing, especially from where I'm coming from. Sometimes I have seen this as maybe it's competing for the fewer resources which are there, whereby you see that there is so much socio-economic problems that are affecting most African countries. And you'd find that people are left with no choice except to compete for the fewer resources that are there. But then at the same time, not realizing that by so doing, we are actually creating divisions, because we end up not having a balanced scale as much as we want to pull together. But then at the end of the day, you would find that the scale is not balanced. It's, you know, so if we pull together going forward, I think it can actually help even the minority of the minorities to be also at a better position, whereby they can actually maybe speak with their own voices, and the other groups can actually amplify their voices. And in so doing, it will actually help us create a unified voice, whereby we speak with one voice and we challenge certain things. But then right now, from what I'm seeing, it's one man for himself, you know.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. So I think that's the only thing that I can just say.
That's a great message. Okay, now just my last question, when you were talking about this, I was just thinking about it. How do you get your I mean, any funding or help? Where is it coming from?
You mean the foundation that is assisting us?
Yes. Where is it coming from? Because I
Okay.
guess it's not from the government, I guess. So is it? Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the government does not fund our work. It doesn't fund for any sex and gender minority groups. Nah, not at all. For our group and most intersex groups, they are actually relying on the Intersex Human Rights Fund that is coming from Austria, which is just small funding as compared to the work that we are faced with, or maybe the work that we are producing. The main challenge, though, is that sometimes you would find that, yes, we might get opportunities, but simply because of probably the capacity that we have as a small organization, you know, if we cannot afford to pay for qualified workforce, you would find that sometimes you are probably one or two people who are doing the work, and sometimes you do the work without getting paid. So you're trying to get the organization to continue surviving. Yeah, and maybe just creating programs, because you don't want to end up maybe having no community. So you have to make sure that you need to keep on serving the community, to be there for the community, to create programs for the community. So in that case, even if we are to volunteer, not everyone can volunteer with their time, because not everyone is willing to work for nothing. So yeah, we are getting that small funding, but it's really a struggle. And sometimes you might find that we do not even have the capacity to apply for bigger funding. Most of us, we haven't been lucky enough to attain a good education, or maybe to write good proposals, to do very good convincing budgets. Yeah, and
is it something that you will need some help with?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes we do consult, but you'd find that sometimes we don't always afford consultation fees because it's very expensive. So yeah, if we can actually get an offer, you know, I think it's something that would be very much appreciated, because we do have many opportunities whereby you know that you have what it takes to maybe to qualify for a certain funding, but then simply because you have no idea.
It's complicated to fill out for this. Yeah. Okay, that's you know what, I will have a talk with other member from our organization and see how we can help you to, you know, because we're doing some educational work with to train activists, something like that. So it could be something as well. We should work. It's great. So at least if we can help like that, that would be great.
That would be more than appreciated. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Ronie, I think we're done with the interview. Once again, I just want to commend you and thank you for your great work. And of course, we'll stay in touch, and we'll put the video, and hopefully, you know, like I'm sure that would make people understand a bit more about the life situation of the intersex people. So thank you very much for sharing your experience. I'm just going to stop the video. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.